prayer at its height is this very deep personal encounter with God. Now, I'm not always ready to move from the ordinary workaday world right into that experience. I need some rhythm, some discipline, some practice to get me to that point. That's why Thomas Merton, one of the great spiritual masters, said that prayers, like the Our Father, the Hail Mary, are often a great way to lead you to prayer. They're a way to dispose the mind. I'll give you a good example, especially with the Hail Mary in mind. The Rosary, we repeat that prayer over and over again. You say, well, what's the point of that? The Buddhist tradition talks about the calming of the monkey mind. The mind's always leaping around from tree to tree, branch to branch, thinking about this and about that. The mind's always rolling. Well, that mind is not ready for communion with God. It needs to be calmed. That's why the praying of the Rosary can be just that sort of calming of your consciousness to prepare you for this union with God. People pray all the time. Studies show that even non-believers pray. What precisely is this activity that so many of us engage in? Well, prayer has taken on myriad forms and expressions over the centuries. Singing, dancing, processing, reading sacred texts, keeping silence, emptying the mind of all imagery. All have been construed as types of prayer. But is there a common denominator, something that all these expressions have in common? St. John of Damascus said this: prayer is the raising of the mind and the heart to God. I know no other place on the face of the earth that evokes this sense of prayer more than where I'm standing now. I'm in the great Sainte-Chapelle in Paris. It was built by St. Louis, King Louis IX, as a kind of reliquary for the relic of the crown of thorns. Lord Kenneth Clark, the great art historian, said that when the light pours through these stained glass windows, it sets up a kind of vibration in the air. What I sense in this place is that electricity. The electricity that comes from the meeting of two spirits, the human longing for God that meets, if I can put it this way, the even more passionate divine longing for us. That electric coming together of these two passions, that's prayer. Prayer is born of that awareness, felt as much as thought, that the transcendent realm impinges on our world. It is the passionate desire to reach it, to communicate with it, to touch it. With the help of some of the greatest figures in the Catholic spiritual tradition, I would like to explore the nature of prayer. I realize that speaking of prayer, mysticism, and the spiritual life often puts us in mind of rather alien figures, medieval monks in their choir stalls, or perhaps hermits squirreled away in the desert. Now, I think monks and hermits have a lot to teach us. I want to begin with someone much closer to our own time and experience. Someone who walked the streets of Manhattan in the mid-20th century. Someone who probably tramped right here through Times Square. That man was Thomas Merton. Merton played a decisive role in the recovery of the Catholic mystical and contemplative tradition in the 20th century. Perhaps more than any other figure in modern times, he taught an anxious and increasingly secularized society how to pray. Thomas Merton was born in the south of France in 1915, the son of a New Zealander father and an American mother, who had met at art school in Paris. Merton's mother died when he was only a boy of 6, and he wandered the world with his painter father, living for short periods in New York, Bermuda, France, and England. When Thomas was 16 and a boarding school student in England, his father died, and the boy found himself alone in the world. As a freshman at Cambridge, he lived a life of debauchery. Too much carousing, too much drinking, too much sex. In fact, Merton fathered a child during that year, and after certain financial and legal arrangements were made, he was sent out of the country to America. He landed here in New York at Columbia University, a place he described affectionately as a great sooty factory. Merton was something of a big man on campus. He joined lots of student organizations. He was for a time the arts and humor editor of The Jester, which was the student literary publication. That in itself tells you a good deal about Merton's personality. One of his teachers was Lionel Trilling, the novelist. The one, though, who influenced him the most was Mark Van Doren, the great Shakespeare scholar. And Merton's friends were among the most intelligent and creative people here at the time. Robert Lax, who became an avant-garde poet, Robert Giroux, who became a great book publisher, were in his circle of friends. Thomas Merton certainly flourished here at Columbia, but still he was leading the life of a secular modern, seeking experience and, above all, pleasure. In the spring of 1938, Thomas Merton was walking down Fifth Avenue. He came to the Scribner's bookstore. It's gone now, but you can see right behind me where it was. And in the shop window, he saw this book, The Spirit of Medieval Philosophy by the French philosopher Etienne Gilson. Merton was taking a course in French poetry. He thought the book might be helpful. He bought it, got on the subway train, and then he opened it up. And he saw on the frontispiece this little Latin word, imprimatur. Let it be printed. It was a sign that it was officially approved by the Catholic Church. A Catholic book, Merton thought with disgust, and he wanted to throw it out the window of the train. But instead, he said, by a special grace, he actually read it, and it revolutionized his life.